The Winters mansion stood tall in the heart of Chicago, its walls of glass and steel stretching into the sky like a monument to power and perfection. Inside lived Alexander Winters, a billionaire known to the world as Mr. Freeze. People called him that not just for his sharp business instincts, but for the way he treated life itself: cold, calculated, and completely devoid of emotion. To Alexander, everything had a purpose, a function, a measurable outcome. If something didn't serve a clear purpose, it didn't belong in his world. Every morning began the same way. He woke at precisely 5:30 a.m., reviewed global market reports, exercised for exactly 45 minutes, and ate a breakfast that never changed. His life ran like a machine, efficient, predictable, and controlled. Emotions were distractions. Compassion was weakness, or so he believed. But even in a life built on certainty, there are things that slip through unnoticed until it's too late. Among the staff who worked quietly in his mansion was Rosa, a 24-year-old maid who seemed almost invisible. She moved through the halls like a shadow, never drawing attention, never speaking unless spoken to. Her uniform was always clean but worn, with small patches stitched carefully at the edges. Her shoes were cracked, barely holding together, yet she walked with quiet determination. No one knew much about her. She never complained, never asked for anything, never took a day off. But there was one thing about Rosa that didn't go unnoticed, at least not by Alexander. She visited the fridge constantly. Multiple times a day she would open it, stand there silently, and examine the contents. She would pick up containers, study expiration dates, and then place them back exactly where they were. She never ate anything, never took anything, just looked. To most people, it might have seemed harmless, but to Alexander, it was suspicious. He began watching her more closely. From the security monitors in his office, he noticed the pattern. Morning, afternoon, evening. There she was, opening the fridge again and again. His mind, trained to detect inefficiency and risk, began forming conclusions. Why was she so interested in the food? Was she planning to steal? Was she scouting what was valuable? In his world, trust wasn't given, it was earned. And Rosa, with her silence and secrecy, had earned none. One afternoon, after a particularly stressful business deal fell apart, Alexander returned home already on edge. His patience was thin, his temper closer to the surface than usual. As he walked into the kitchen, there she was again. Rosa stood in front of the fridge, carefully examining a container. That was it. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice cut through the room like a blade. Rosa jumped, startled, nearly dropping the container. Her face turned pale as she quickly shut the fridge. I was just," she began, her voice trembling. But Alexander didn't let her finish. "Enough," he snapped. "I've seen this behavior for days, sneaking around, checking things that don't belong to you. Do you think I don't notice?" Her eyes widened, filled with fear. "No, sir, I wasn't." "You're fired." The words landed instantly, without hesitation, without mercy. Rosa froze. Alexander stepped closer, his tone colder than ever. "Pack your things and leave. I don't tolerate dishonesty in my house." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't argue, she didn't defend herself, she didn't beg. She simply nodded. Within an hour, she was gone. The mansion returned to its usual silence, but something about it felt different, colder. 3 days passed. 3 long, quiet days. Alexander noticed small disruptions in his routine. The house wasn't as spotless. The atmosphere felt heavier, but he ignored it. People were replaceable. Efficiency would return. Or so he thought. On the 3rd evening, Mrs. Carter, the head housekeeper who had worked for him for over 20 years, approached him hesitantly. "Sir, may I speak with you?" Alexander barely looked up from his tablet. "Make it quick." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's about Rosa." His expression hardened slightly. "What about her?" Mrs. Carter's voice softened. "She wasn't stealing." That got his attention. "What do you mean?" "She was checking for expired food, the items that were going to be thrown away." Alexander frowned. "And?" Mrs. Carter's eyes filled with emotion. "She was taking them home to feed children." Silence. "3 of them," she continued. "Liam, Daniela, and a baby named Mara. They lost their mother last year. Their fathers aren't around. Rosa has been taking care of them." Alexander said nothing. "She didn't just give them leftovers," Mrs. Carter added. "She used her own salary to buy them medicine. Sometimes she skipped meals so they could eat." The room felt suddenly smaller. "The heater barely works where she lives," Mrs. Carter said quietly. "And when you fired her, she didn't even have enough for food." For the first time in years, Alexander felt something unfamiliar. Guilt. It hit him slowly at first, then all at once. He saw her again in his mind, the way she quietly checked the fridge, the way she never spoke, the way she accepted being fired without a fight. Not because she was guilty, but because she was used to being unheard. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. For the first time in decades, his perfectly structured routine fell apart. Memories he had buried long ago began to surface. His mother, a woman who had worked tirelessly cleaning other people's homes, a woman who had sacrificed everything for him, a woman who had died when he was just 12 because no one stepped in to help. And now, years later, he had become the very kind of person who would have ignored her, or worse, thrown her out. The next morning, Alexander did something completely out of character. He went looking for Rosa. It wasn't easy. There were no records, no easy way to track her down, but he didn't stop. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about efficiency or time. He was thinking about doing the right thing. Eventually, he found her, in a small, run-down apartment in a struggling part of the city. The building was worn, the walls cracked, the air heavy with neglect. He knocked. When the door opened, Rosa stood there surprised. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Behind her, he caught a glimpse of the children, thin, quiet, watching cautiously. The room was cold. There was barely any furniture, and on a small table sat what looked like their entire food supply. It wasn't much. Alexander stepped inside slowly, taking it all in. This was the life she had been living while working in his mansion. This was what he had thrown away without a second thought. "I was wrong," he said finally. The words felt foreign, but necessary. Rosa said nothing. "I want to help," he added. "I want to give you a chance, a real one." He offered to pay for her education, whatever she wanted to study. He offered stable housing, support for the children, and something she had never truly had before: opportunity. At first, she hesitated. People like her weren't used to second chances, but something in his voice had changed. It wasn't cold anymore. Years passed, and everything changed. Rosa not only accepted the opportunity, but transformed it into something bigger than anyone could have imagined. She studied, worked, and eventually became the director of a citywide food donation program, a program funded by Alexander. Together, they built a system that ensured no surplus food went to waste. Restaurants, supermarkets, and households all contributed, and the food reached families who needed it most. The same kind of families Rosa had once struggled to help alone. The same kind of family she used to be. As for Alexander, he was no longer Mr. Freeze. People noticed the change, not in his business success, but in his humanity. He still valued efficiency, But now he understood something far more important, that behind every quiet person might be a story louder than anything you've ever heard. And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. So the next time you see someone unnoticed, unheard, or misunderstood, take a moment, because you might just be looking at a silent hero, and their story might change yours forever.